we go any further, I just want to thank Joel Elias from the Gelley for putting together this entire event. One of my Rabbeim, Rabbi Shlita, said that when it comes to technology, we know the dangers that we face with it. But there is no doubt, he said, that the Ribbono Shel Olam enabled technology for us to be able to disseminate and to spread Torah throughout the world. And there is no question that all DAF have enabled all of us here, Kol HaMasayim Kan, to be able to do that and to actually put a face to a voice and to a name and to meet these people in person. It's a big schus and a kavod gadol to be able to be hosted here tonight. It's also befrat that we've got some of our Gelley Talmidim who came with us to New York, to the Siyum Hashas, here with us tonight, and who have continued to learn daf after daf, and to be here in such a choshev and maimud, and we thank all daf for bringing us all together. OU, Rabbi Elefant, I sat with him this morning, and he told me that OU's mission is to bring kashrus to as many Yidden around the world, to make sure that what we put in our mouths is looked after, as many Yidden as possible. And what all daf has done through their technology is to also make sure that what comes out our mouth, the Hevel PM, the fact that we all learn together, that also to make sure as many Yidden can be reached. It's a huge schus to be hosting here tonight. And on that note, I'd like to thank all the speakers who are coming and who are here. But befrat Dayan Gelley here tonight, who has made a special effort to come away from a simcha and to be here and spend a few minutes with us, is a schus gadol to have the Av based in of London based in Dayan Gelley Shlita.
Kavod, Yedidi, Harav Moshe Elefant Shlita, Kavod Rabbonim, Rav Hauer, Rav Schwed. I'm sorry I don't know the names of the other members of staff and team who've come with. We say to you a very warm Shalom Aleichem. We thank you for hosting a Siyum on Yevamos here in London. I can feel in the room, I've sat here for 20 minutes, and it's palpable, the affinity, the chibo to the Magid Shia, Harav Moshe Elefant. People are so excited that this person I've listened to for so many years, I've actually met him, I've actually said Shalom Aleichem to him, and it is really, very, extremely special. I've got a new touch in all daf. I know Rabbi Moshe for many years in a different capacity through our mutual and joint kashrus initiatives. We work together on a lot of issues, and I marvel at the organization of the Orthodox Union Kashrus Bichlal. It's a magnificent organization in terms of their structure, in terms of how their policies are thought through and who they're aiming for and how they manage the whole country. And I wish a lot of bracha v'atzlacha going weiter. The chidush that I understand today from all daf, that everything emanates from the Torah. It's all daf. That's where it starts and that's where it finishes. When we come to kashrus, when we come to policies, we come to ideas, where is the chokhmah coming from? What chokhmah is this? This is all the chokhmah Torah. It's all daf. Everything is daf. There's a famous story of Rabbi Zimmerman, Zeichet Tzaddik v'Kodesh Levracha, when Balbos came to see him, and he said he needs business advice. He's got to make a decision that's going to possibly change his whole future, his career, his business, and he needs an eitzah. Rabbi Chanan says, "No, come Dayan, come." And he came, and Rabbi Chanan opened the Gemara Baba Basra, and he started saying 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He was hovering over a sugya. So he says, "No, Rebbe, no. My issue here is an issue in business. That's what I need to speak to you about." So Rabbi Chanan said, "Von wanneer gehe ich nemen de Chochmah zu sagen, was ich soll tun in my business? Where is that Chochmah going to come from? It's going to come from the Gemara and Baba Basra. Leave me another 3 minutes. I'll finish the sugya, and in Mitzvah Hashem I'll have Siyata Dishmaya to be able to impart and to be able to give you." My Rabbi said, just let me share with you a very, very brief thought. Where is the Mekoyer that one makes a Siyum when one finishes a Masechta. So the Medrash says, Minayin shoisin Siyum, the Gemara shel Torah, I learned it from Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech got up in the morning, he had asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, instead of asking for riches and all the other things, Shlomo HaMelech said he wants Chochmah. And he woke up in the morning and all of a sudden he understood what birds were saying, he understood what trees were saying to one another. So he threw a party, he made a Siyum. Yeah, that's a Mekoyer. But he hadn't learned yet. So learn the Masechta quickly, learn it, and then make a Siyum, and the Siyum straight away. So one pshat I've heard is that the very fact that someone's got, an ability to be able to learn Torah, that in itself is a simcha, and that deserves a siyum. That deserves a fleishik suda. A person, the Rebbeinu Shalom gives a person the yecholes, the ability to understand, learning a daf gemara, Yevamos, where Rabbi says, a shvera mesechta, the very fact that one's able to learn it in a way one previously couldn't learn it, that's a simcha, and for that you have a siyum. But perhaps another pshat, and with that I finish. The Ramban in the Hakdama to the Torah says, Shlomo HaMelech's chokhmah of understanding sichas dekolim, what trees are whispering to one another, of understanding what animals are saying to one another. What was this chokhmah? Was this a chokhmah mi bachutz? This is something the Rebbeinu Shalom Keilu implanted a chip. Yeah, Trump would say so. A chip in Shlomo HaMelech, and all of a sudden he knew the whole of Torah. And that's what the chokhmah was. Says Ramban, no. What happened was, Rebbeinu Shalom gave Shlomo HaMelech a new dimension of Chochmas HaTorah. With this Chochmas HaTorah, he understood Sichas Dekolim. He understood everything that was going in the world. Why? Because everything comes from the Torah. And for that, he made a seal. My Rabbi say, when we make a siyum, perhaps we've got both elements. When we make a siyum, if we finish one Masechta, Torah, Divrei Torah niim b'mokom echad v'ashirim b'mokom acher. Once you've learned the Gemara in Yevamos, when you're going to learn a similar Gemara in Ksubis or a parallel Gemara in Krisis, you're going to understand it because you've learned the Gemara in Yevamos. So the Siyum is because the Masechta is giving you the opportunity to understand the rest of the Torah. But it's also a Siyum, it's also a Simcha, because what you've always had the Masechtas, and you've probably learned the Masechtas in Yeshiva. But the fact you've had a new dimension of this Torah that gives you an amkus, and an amkus in Avonos HaTorah is a different connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu ultimately, and for that we have a Siyum. So my Rabbi say, I'm extremely honored to be associated with this Choshev Siyum. Again, I thank Rav Moshe and the other Rabbanim who've come that give prestige to our town, this simcha that we can feel that everybody was nene so many years from a klokite in learning. I understand the Shia is given with b'chachmo, v'svuna, v'seichel toiv, and all the added things are put in and the other things are not needed or kept out, etc. I'm told it's absolutely a magnificent Shia, and my eirach for the OU has gone up as a result. It was pretty high where it was, but it's all daf, where Rabbi say. Im it's Hashem, this Choshev organization should go Michael v'Chail and should have Hatzlacha Rabbi. And it's Hashem, we should soon go and Keke Mashiach Tzedkeinu b'meira v'yameinu. Amen.
A big thank you to Dayan Gelley for his divrei bracha, and we now come to one of our international guest speakers who's flown in tonight. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Ki im b'seiros Hashem cheftzoi u'b'seiros soi yege yemam v'layla. And I heard from Gurvitz, Ola Gesund sein, that u'b'seiros soi is not u'b'seiros Hashem, u'b'seiros soi, when someone is a mechadesh himself in Torah, when he himself is u'b'seiros soi yege, that is the Ashrei Mi. So to have the mechadshim here from America who've disseminated Torah, and the director of Uldaf, it's a big schus and kavod gadol for us to ask Rabbi Moshe Schwed Shlita to say a few words.
Thank you, Rabbi Morgan. It was nice meeting you this morning for a few minutes, and and I got to learn that you're an American yeshiva grad just like me, so I felt at home. Thank you very much for hosting. I'd like to thank Joel. I learned something. This hasn't happened yet in the United States of America. I think I had 3 5-minute Zoom meetings with the director of operations here, and he put together this event. As they say here, brilliant. And thank you to the Shadchan, Ashley, for being Meshadach, us, and the Gelley for hosting this event tonight. Ashley's been a Talmud of Rabbi Elefant for 17 years, and this is the first time they've met. Oldaf is dedicated in memory of Meir Ben Chaim Waknin. May the thousands of hours of Torah learnt daily be an ilah for his neshama and his chus for his wonderful mishpacha. Our past Siyumim and this Siyum has also been dedicated by the Goldberg family in memory of Yitzchak Isaac Ben Harav Eliezer. I've talked about him at different Siyumim. He's somebody who the doctor said he could live for 5 years. And through 250 hospital visits, he persevered. And with Siyata D'Shmaya, lived till 47. I always say it's a tremendous lesson for us, Loim De Daf Yomi, the perseverance that's needed. We don't give ourselves enough credit for the perseverance that's needed to learn day after day after day, especially in Masechta like Yevamos, where every few daf, I have to admit publicly, I was sitting there by Hauer at the beginning of Yevamos, I said, Yevamos, I think it's a little bit overblown. And then I get to Rabbi Gamliel, and I think, okay, I got past the hard part. And then you get to the next parak, and you get to Ha'isha, and it's coming again. Baruch Hashem. We've made it almost till the end, and everybody deserves a lot of credit for the perseverance. I'd also like to mention, we had a few people that sponsored here local, Rafi Bood in honor of Rabbi Elefant, and John Greenwood in honor of the Rabbanim who give inspiring shiurim on Oldaf, and Yoel Strauss in memory of Yaakov ben Leah. I also have to thank all the Rabbanim and the staff that came along with us from the OU. It's very exciting to come visit London. I'm going to Manchester. I was waiting for that. I wanted to hear. We'll send the feedback tomorrow night back to London. Rabbi Hauer, who's the executive vice president of the OU. Rabbi Elefant, who besides being Daf Yomi Magachir, is the COO of OU Kosher. Rabbi Moshe Brandsdorfer, who's executive director of all the different Torah projects that the OU is involved in. Asher Tesser and Jeremy Chernikov, who work behind the scenes. I stand in the front when you see my face, but the apps don't happen without people like them and the developers and everything else. Grace Yashakayach to them. And I must mention, I think he's one of the main reasons we're having a Siyum in town. He just walked in, Rabbi Simon Taylor, is a London native, who currently lives in the United States, and is a colleague of mine at the OU. And one of the initial ideas of making a Siyum here was from Reb Simon. So, Yashakayach. Many of you may be wondering, why on earth would a bunch of Americans on July 4th leave the United States of America and come back here to the United Kingdom? Traitors. Well, someone was telling me if I listen closely, there might be a few people shooting off fireworks, like the Americans are hiding underground. No. And the answer is, I mentioned Ashley before. The first time I met Ashley in person, and I feel it's important to mention this story. Ashley emailed me and said he has a friend who is also a Talmud of Rabbi Elefant, who's very, very, very sick. Can we arrange a Zoom meeting for this Talmud to meet Rabbi Elefant? And we arranged the Zoom meeting. I think we spoke for around a half an hour. And this person passed away 2 weeks later. So we want to dedicate this evening as a schos and iler for his neshama, Yehuda Leib ben Shmuel. And we've kept up since then, and I have to thank Ashley for taking us around today. Now, we didn't go to the Big Ben Tower and all other Mekayim Sakdashim. We have to come back for that. So Rabbi Morgan said that I'm one of the international guest speakers. I'm not one of the guest speakers. I'm just here taking care of all the technical work. But one short Dvar Torah before I turn it over. We learned recently, Parshas Nasei, Vayihi Bayoim, Kalois Moshe L'Hakim Es HaMishkan. Moshe finished putting up the Mishkan, and then the Siyum started being Makav the Kabbanis. And Rashi brings the famous Chazal that in that word of Kechalois is a remez that Klal Yisrael was Kekala Nechneses L'Chuppah. Sefer asks on the pasuk, Vayihi Bayoim Kalois Moshe Es HaMishkan, did Moshe actually finish putting up the Mishkan? He brings famous Chazal. Rashi in Parshas Pekudei brings it. The Moshe Rabbeinu didn't put up the Mishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu, first, Klal Yisrael tried. They weren't able to put it up. And Moshe Rabbeinu tried, and he wasn't able to put it up. And Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, Asoik biyadcha, you do the asik, you do the work, and the Mishkan will go up by itself. V'kachava, Moshe Rabbeinu, Keilu, pretended to do the work, and the Mishkan went up by itself. So what does it mean that Moshe Rabbeinu put up the Mishkan? It went up by itself. Dr. Chassam Sofer, he says, Einachanami. He says, a chiddush, the taish of Kechalois, Moshe L'Hakim, doesn't mean that he finished putting it up. He says, Kechaloisai comes from the lashon of Kolsa, Nichsef Avagam Kolsa Nafshi. Moshe Rabbeinu has a cheshek, and a tzumayin, and a yearning to put up the Mishkan. That's what gave him the koyach to put up the Mishkan. And the Mishkan went up by itself because of that cheshek. And I was thinking, that Chazal bring in Parshas Pekudei, Asoik, Moshe Rabbeinu, you do the Asik, you do the Malacha, as Mamish, what? It's a famous Vart, Anu Amelim, Heim Amelim. Right? Our Ikar Avodah is the Amelos. We're Amal Makabel Schar for our Amelos. But what does it need? It needs the Kolsa, it needs the Cheshek, it needs the Geshmak, it needs the yearning, day after day, to be able, that itself needs Yata Deshmaya. But that's what gives us the Yagato Matzasa. If every day we come with that Tzimayin, we get up in the morning, whether it's early in the morning, whether it's late at night, whether we're walking, we're driving, and we're able to tune in with a cheshek and a tzimayin to be able to learn Torah. That's what gives us the Yagata Matzasa Tamin. And like I mentioned, I'm still behind. So today I had a schus to learn with Ashley for a few minutes today while we were waiting for some other people. So I learned the Gemara today of Kamayim Panim Al Panim. And I noticed, Rashi says on the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda says, and Rashi's lashon is, Lefi panim v'leiv shat noisen l'Torah, libcha oimid l'chol lahamed girsa. I don't know if this is Pasha Taich in Rashi, but the zikr goes into the words of Rashi. The leiv and panim you give to the Torah, so Torah will give back to you. That timayin, that cheshek, that interest, that drive, that yearning for Torah is what you'll get back from the Torah. So I just want to end off the bracha with another incredible word I just saw from the Chassam Sofer. We daven, we say every night, Ma'ariv, Hava Selam Beis Yisrael, Amcha Havta, Torah, Mitzvahs, Chukum, Mishpatim, Esanu Limadata. Al Kein Hashem Elokeinu, B'shachvenu, V'kumeinu Nasiach B'chukecha, V'nismach B'divrei, Yisrael V'mitzvah Le'olam V'oed. Chassam Sofer says that first we say Hava Selam Beis Yisrael, Amcha Havta, Torah, Mitzvahs, Chukum, Mishpatim, Esanu Limadata. You taught us all those things. He says, what are the chukim that you taught us? He says, al pidrosh, the chukim means the Eibush that gave us a tzivoy vasafta de ganecha. He says, chayk over here means lechem chukiyat rifeini. We have a mitzvah to go out every day and bring in a parnasa to support our families. Al kein Hashem Elokeinu, nasiach b'chukecha. Nasiach, he says the lashon of tefillah. V'yetzi yitzchak l'suach basadeh. We daven to Hashem, b'shachveinu v'kumeinu, in the morning and the evening. Nasiach b'chukecha. Give us parnasa. Let us be matzliach with our bechukecha. But what's v'nismach? V'nismach b'divrei salmu teirasacha v'mitzvasacha lo'olam v'oed. Don't forget, our simcha has to come from the Chai Olam. We have to be mispalo and be matzliach in the Chai Yishah. But the v'nismach has to be b'divrei teirasacha v'mitzvasacha lo'olam v'oed. My bracha, first thank you for everyone that came out. Our bracha, my bracha is that everyone should be matzliach, b'nasiach b'chukecha. but the simcha should come from the v'nismach b'divrei seirasacha v'mitzvaysacha leilam v'oed. Just quickly what the program has in store for us. I would like to invite Rabbi Yehoshua Hartman to speak for a few minutes and introduce Rabbi Moshe Hauer. And then we're going to have Rabbi Moshe Elefant's going to speak, and we're going to make the Siyum. There'll be some singing and dancing, and then there'll be a dessert buffet. Before I have to introduce Rabbi Yehoshua, Rabbi Hartman, I could say we've become very close. Rabbi Hartman, every week, gives for those people, it's for people who know Maral also, but for people like me, who haven't had the schus to be Isaac in the Maral, we could get a taste of the Maral every single week. We have another platform called All Parsha, and Rabbi Hartman sends us a beautiful, beautiful Zisa piece every week on the Maral on the Parsha. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and you get a flavor and a geschmack and a real understanding of what the Maharal, how the Maharal learns up the Parsha. So I'd like to ask Rabbi Yehoshua to come and introduce Rabbi Hauer. Shekayach.
Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Sai. Rabbi Moshe, the question that you asked, what are Americans doing in England? I'm asking it already for the last 16 years. I could just tell you, when I first came to England 16 years ago, I heard, maybe it's my joke, maybe I heard it, no copyrights, everybody could use it. If you want Gashmias, live in America. If you want Ruchnias, live in Eretz Yisrael. If you want neither, live in London. But Rabbi said, these are only jokes. It's kedai to know. It's a beautiful, beautiful kehila, full of Torah, full of chesed, full of kol midos tovas she Yisrael nizbochu b'hem. That's the emes. I would like to introduce Rabbi Moshe Hauer, Rabbi Say, a Yedid Nefesh of mine, and maybe the Olam doesn't know him yet, but I'm going to say already now. We're looking at someone who's going to be, Yetz Hashem, one of the manhigim in the askanim of the door, like Reb Moshe Sher Zatzal, v'chayoytze b'zeh. I'm not exaggerating. I promise you. Reb Moshe Hauer is someone who was a Rav in Baltimore for 25 years, or something like that, in a shul, and he was the ultimate Rav, what a Rav's about. I remember once Rav Yoshev Zatzal told me, you know what defines a Rav? That he takes the kehila midarga ledarga. That's what a Rav is. That slowly but surely the kehila learns more, does more, mitzvahs, ma'asim tovim, and constantly growing. And I never have seen this like I've seen it. I have come very often to Baltimore and see the shul. Rav Hauer had chaburas with the balabatim of the shul. And I would see b'chush, how they're going, midarga ledarga. They started learning Chumash Rashi, and then they started learning Maharal, and then one sefer after another with the balabatim. And just, it showed that you could take a oilam and just elevate it. Not just to give a nice drasha, but to grow together. What's unique about Rav Hauer is his understanding of people, and to find a tzad shove with many, many people. The higher the Baal Madregi you are, the more you could communicate to more people. Like in Yehoshua, Isha Sheruach boy, lahaloich neged kol echad ve'echad. The two outstanding milas of many, many milas of Rav Hauer is his neimus. I don't even know how to say neimus in English. What would you say, Rabbi say? Pleasantness. And his chachma, and combining so many different worlds in such a beautiful way. As you know, there's a big machlekes in the world, not so known, between, does machshava and musar, do they go together? In the Or Yisrael, it's brought down, Rabbi Yitzchak Blaser says the Sifrei Musar is Sifrei Maharal also. But Lamaisa, they're divided to two. There are those who learn Musar, and there are those who learn Machshava. Do they ever meet? Okay, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim, but Rav Hauer is the ultimate example of being a tremendous Baal Musar and a tremendous Baal Machshava. He brings to the table so many virtues, a Talmud Chacham, a Yireh Shamayim, great midas, and as I said, Chachma and Ne'imus. He now is not only a Rav of a shul, he is a Rav of many, many shuls, Rabbi say. You see, OU has 19 departments. I just learned it now. We know it for the kashrus side, but there's also very much involved in Torah with shuls in America, with schools in America, and it's a whole big network of Habatzas Torah. The Daf Yomi is part of it, of which Rabbi Hauer is in charge of. I just maybe to conclude, before we call up Rav Hauer up, listen to what he has to say. He's going to be in Mirz Hashem, someone that we're all going to know, B'li Shum Safek. Just to bring out, what is the Siyum here, that we're here in London? The Gemara says that if a person's in a place where he sees another Yid dying, so he has to do Kriya, Kesefer Torah Shenisraf. We're on Shabbos and the Gemara in Moed Katan. Says that, why is that every Jew like a Sefer Torah Shenisraf? So Rashi on the Gemara says, and I'm sure Rav Elefant could correct me if I'm going to misquote it, please do, that every Jew is Mola Mitzvahs, and therefore he's like a Sefer Torah, because all the mitzvahs that he did till now, the past. The Tur and Siman Shin Mem and Yoredea, and the Maral bring another Rashi, which points out the Bach, it's Rashi on the Rif. Not because what he did till now, but what he could accomplish more, and if he died, he cannot accomplish it. It's a potential which does not materialize. Every Siyum is these two Rashis. Michad Gisa, the Oilam learned Yevamos, which is Moiridik and Gavaldik, and like Reb Schwed mentioned, a perseverance of daf after daf. But by Am Yisrael, nothing ends. It's always just the beginning of the next step of bringing out a potential weiter. So without any further ado, I'd like to call Bakasha, Yedid Nafshi, Rav Hauer.
If only one possible response to that introduction is that I have to tell a joke. So there was a rabbi, a priest, and a minister that were speaking with each other. And Nishal Hashela Zu Bifneim, they asked the following question: what do you want said at your levaya? And the priest said, I hope that at my funeral, they will say he was a truly holy man. And the minister said, I hope that at my funeral they will say, there went a man of great kindness. And the rabbi said, I hope that at my funeral they'll say, look, he's moving. Rav Yeshua, I'm moving. It's a great schus. It's a really great privilege to be able to be here to celebrate this Siyum, which means so much to be able to be here to celebrate the Siyum. First, just as a statement of appreciation, it is a beautiful kehillah. It's a ir malea chachamim v'seifrim. I arrived this morning at 6-something in the morning and had Baruch Hashem the opportunity to meet many people throughout the day. And London is blessed with people who are Talmidei Chachamim, who are involved in such outstanding, dedicated work, creative work to bring Torah and to bring good things to this kehillah. I don't know, and I shared this with those who were with me, I don't know that I've ever seen such a group in any city, any place. And Ashreichem, it should continue. Be'ezus Hashem, you should continue to be such a wonderful, wonderful, nourishing ground for such things. I have the schus to daven Afen Mincha with Rabbi Elefant. Today was a first that I daven Mincha with Rabbi Elefant, and he didn't have half his self after he finished davening in a Daf Yomi Gemara. Every day in the OU when he's davening, I hope it's okay for me to say this, but when he finishes davening, out comes the Daf Yomi Gemara. Today we're here for Daf Yomi Siyum, no Daf Yomi Gemara. But to watch and to see this transatlantic chibur, I can't imagine what I would give to be able to understand what Rabbi Elefant feels as person after person comes over and says Shalom Aleichem to a Rebbe for 17 years, for 15 years, for 7 years, who they never met. I don't know how, Rabbi Elefant, together with Rabbi Menachem had the largest kashrus organization in the world. And somehow, on the side, he manages to give one of the most popular, if not the most popular, Daf Yomi Shir, quality Daf Yomi Shir in the world. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should continue to give him the koyach to do so, and to get nachas, to look around the room always, and to get nachas from what he is doing. It's a siyum on Maseches Yevamos. And you know you're in trouble when you hear people like reminiscing about the good old days of Erevin. Yevamos is not just a Masechta Chamura. It's a mitzvah gedola ad ma'id. How do we know? Because we know that the aside of Malchus B'Yisrael lay in the mitzvah of Yibum, lay in the mitzvah of Hakam Hashem. From Yudah and Tamar, Boaz and Rus, to a certain degree, even Laitu ben Isav was a certain level of this kind of a Hakam Hashem. How is it? What's the idea that it lies in this mitzvah? You know that in the beginning of time, Cain killed Hevel. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu confronted him, Cain, he pretended not to know, and he offered a strange defense. Not even a defense, rather a strange deflection. And he said, Lo yodati, hashemer achi anochi. I don't know. Am I responsible for my brother? How should I know where where he is? Why should I know? Am I responsible for him? He said it with a question mark. Later, we would learn in the Torah, in Parshas Kedoshim, that you don't say Hashem Arachi Anechi with a question mark. That there's not just an Isser of Ritzicha, of killing someone, but there's also an Isser of Leisamoid al Dam Reyecha, which is a Leisasei, that says, Shemer Achicha Ata. You're responsible to look out for each other, to protect each other, to not watch while somebody else, Le'olenu, is harmed. So, Darga number one is the one who kills. A level above that, which we're taught, which is a mitzvah that stands on all of Klal Yisrael, is that we have to be shomer, we have to protect people, le'olenu, lest they be killed. But there's a third madrega, and that madrega is the person died. He's gone. You didn't do it. It just happened. But you're going to bring that person back to life. A level of achrayus, which is the Torah's mitzvah of Yibum, which says that the person's gone, and they're gone without leaving a trace. And it's your responsibility, lahakim shem hames, to perform tchias hamesim in a certain extent. That level of achrayus, which is the mitzvah of Yibum, that level of achrayus is the aside of Malchus B'Yisrael. Malchus, which is supposed to be Lev HaUmah, that cares, leads, builds a nation of Klal Yisrael. It's not even enough to protect. One has to go further, to resurrect, to rebuild. It's possible, one might say, that it's a minig by Siyumim, that you tie the end of the Masechta and the beginning of the Masechta together. We all know we're still holding in it. Most of us are still holding in it. The end of Maseches Yevamos is Takonas Agunos. Takonas Agunos is that. It was the area of halacha which perhaps occupied the Gedolei Paiskei Klal Yisrael, of all the dairas that they put the most effort into, of anything. Why? It in itself was a tchiyah. To be matir somebody mechevla yigun. You know that all the Paiskim, Rabbi Tzolkach and others, they quote this Tshuvas Habach, who says a memra. I don't think it's a chazal anywhere. A memra, which was Shogar B'fi Kol, that Kol Hamatir Aguna Ki'ilu Bana Achas Mechurves Yerushalayim. You know, a meyabim is called a goyel. Maybe no, Megillas Rus. It's called a goyel. A goyel is a person whose kurva to the person moves them to try to bring them out, not protect them, but to bring them out from the depths of difficulty. And that goyel, we might say with a small gimel, is the haschala, is the Ima Shel Malchus, is the beginning of the geula, that achrayas beyond that each of us feel for each other. The great chizuk that I think that all of us who have, I think you say, crossed the pond to come here, I think that we have from being here, is that this siyum is an example of something which was unintended. Believe it or not, when Rabbi Moshe Schwed, together with Rabbi Elefant, together with Rabbi Weil, and when they built this app, I don't think we were thinking transatlantic. I know apps go everywhere, but you know, there's a chibur which is felt here. I know it sounds maybe like a little corny. I don't know if that's an expression in England. Is that an expression? It sounds a little corny, but it's really something. We don't know you. We haven't met you. But there's such an energy in Torah of tchiyah that Klal Yisrael is experiencing. The Torah is being brought back to life. The last prakim of Yevamos, when was the last time they were learned by thousands and thousands of people? And there's a feeling of being goyalim for each other. Everyone's doing together. Everyone's doing together. Rav Meir Shapira, Zichrono Livracha, had a vision of a daf yomi that would be ma'achet Klal Yisrael as a path to geula. May the Torah that we learn together, that we have the schus to learn together, just build our sense of chibur, just build our sense of achrayas, of care one for the other. We should be shemrim for each other. We should be goyalim of each other. And be zeicha be'ezus Hashem b'mheira to the gula shalem.
Thank you, Rabbi Hauer. I just want to give one big thank you to Rabbi Shirley Weisbaum. As soon as he saw a sign that is trying to make a siyum in London, he reached out. What could he do to help? And thank you. He did tremendous work. I'd like to call upon Rabbi Elefant, who's going to speak now. And then we'll make the siyum. And then we'll have the dessert reception. And Mirza Shem, Rav Zimmerman will be coming to speak during the dessert reception. Rabbi Elefant.
As everybody said tonight, the incredible reception that we have received here in London all day. I had the schus to meet many Rabbonim and many Dayanim and Kehillas, and with the incredible warm reception. I know it's not in my own schus, it's in the schus that we at the OU work so tirelessly. Our area is kashrus, but it's not just kashrus, it's Torah, and all the myriad programs that the OU does, L'man Hashem and L'man Torasai. There's so many people that I need to thank, and it becomes difficult to thank everybody because you start to forget, and then it's better you shouldn't have started. But I have to thank Ashley Cohn, a person who till last night, we never met personally, but there's a connection, even if we never met personally, and his dedication to our program and his dedication today to be such a gracious host was very, very appreciated. Of course, I have to thank my colleagues from the OU, starting with Rabbi Hauer, the executive vice president of the OU, and Rabbi Schwed, who has taken all DAF to where we never expected it to be. And then we started all Parsha and started all Mishnah. For Oid Yodei Natuya, with plans all the time to continue, and Rabbi Brandsdorfer, who recently joined the OU in these efforts, and Rabbi Tesher and Jeremy Chernikov, and of course Simon Taylor, all of these people who came and traveled. I'm sure you know, Sunday we don't work. Monday, today was a holiday in the United States, and nobody thought about that. If we could come and we could do, we came. And all of these people deserve much credit. The truth of the matter is, it's really very hard for me to speak tonight. So many people today, all day, from Shachris this morning through the culmination tonight, came over to say, I've been listening to your Shurim, I hear your Divrei Torah. The people I don't know. To be honest, I'm not sure if I'm going to remember everybody's name by tomorrow morning. But I will remember what every one of you said. And I will remember the chizik that you all give me. You know, you say a shir, people ask me, where do I say my shir? I say my shir at my dining room table. They ask me, who is your audience? I said, my audience is me, because I look at a mirror sometimes. So that's my entire audience. And you're speaking, and you don't know to whom you're speaking. And you don't know if you're putting in the kaiches. One of the Rabbanim came over to me here earlier and asked me, how long does it take to prepare a shir? I said, hours. And you put in the kaiches, and you say the shir, and maybe you're just saying it to the small tape recorder, and that's the only one listening. And then when you come to the other side, and you hear so many people coming over, and they say, we listen, and we remember this vart, and we remember this godly you mentioned. It's such a chizik. We're not here for you. You're being mechazik us. And I will be eternally grateful to all of you for that. The Gemara, the last memra, I was really scared, I have to tell you, because being the last speaker is a very bad place to be in. Because you don't know what anybody's going to say before that. And how do you know they're not going to say your speech? And now you're stuck. So I have to thank Rabbi Hauer and Rabbi Hartman. You didn't say my speech. The Gemara at the end of Masechta Yevamos ends with the famous Maimer Chazal, Talmidei Chachamim, Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, Shenemar, a pasuk that we say every day, V'cho b'nayich l'mudei Hashem, V'rav Shalom b'nayich. And all of the Mefarshim discuss, why is this the last memra of Masechta Yevamos? The Chassam Sofer, I met some wonderful people this evening who are Einiklach from the Chassam Sofer, from the Talmidei Chassam Sofer, told me how I appreciate that I say a word from the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer says a very interesting mahalach. The Chassam Sofer says that everything in the world, every characteristic, every behavior in the world was brought to the world for a reason. Even what we look at as negative is not always negative. So if there's machlokes in the world, there's good about machlokes. What does it mean? What's good about machlokes? Good about war? Good about battle? When it's machlokes in Torah. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that the world needs machlokes, let the machlokes be in Torah. Because what happens? We know the Gemara says, as vohe besufa afilu av v'benoi rav talmidai are learning Torah and it gets a little heated. Nas oivim zelazeh, they get into serious disagreement. And because of that serious disagreement, afterwards we all end up at the Siyum. we end up with shalom at the end. And that's why Zoktach Sam Seifet says, Marbim Shalom. Because they keep on making shalom. Because every day we wake up, and there's another machlokes in the Gemara, and there's another machlokes between the Rebbe and his Talmud, but every day we make up. So we have the machlokes, but we have many machlokes, and we have much shalom. That's the kind of shalom that the Eibishter wants in the Welt. Another explanation that I saw is that, truthfully, Masechta Yevamos does teach us much about shalom. The Beis Yisrael, the Gelley Rebbe, said that the first question that the Gemara asked, all of us who learned the Masechta, halvai, we should remember the first question. The first question the Gemara asked was, we started with Tezvav Arayas, 15 Arayas, and the Gemara asked, there should be 16 Anusas Aviv. The Gemara answered, that case wasn't mentioned in the Mishnah, but plukta loikamayri. The Mishnah doesn't want to speak about machlokes. All of a sudden, a Mishnah is avoiding machlokes. Masechta Yevamos avoids machlokes. And then we continue, we learned the machlokes by Shammai, by Hillel, fundamental machlokes in Hilchos Yevamos. But the Gemara says that lo nimnu by Shammai and by Hillel to get married. They made it work. Even though they disagreed, they made it work. And then we continue learning the Masechta, as Rabbi Hauer discussed, about Chazal was so concerned, Mishum Iguna Kila Bar Rabbanon. Chazal was so concerned that a Jewish woman should not remain in Aguna. I had a great-great-grandfather, the Machs Avram, the brother of, he used to say, a Chol Hamoed, he wrote Shuvas to be Mater Agunas. On Erev Shabbos, right by his man, he still was writing Shuvas to be Mater Agunas. And the Agdomatis Shailas of Shuvas, he writes that he was Zoich in his lifetime to be Mater 1,000 Agunas. Agunas, bringing Shalom to the world. And the Vart goes even a step further. I have to tell you, Rabbi Sai, if you listen to the Shir, you heard the Vart. The Gemara says that if somebody drowns in Mayim She'en Lem Soif, in water that you can't see all the borders, his wife cannot get remarried. Because we have to be concerned that maybe he came out and we didn't see. What's the likelihood if somebody drowned in the Atlantic Ocean that he survived? Wouldn't it be better, Mishimiguna Kilaba Rabbanon, that we should say that his wife, he certainly didn't survive, and let his wife get remarried? The Sfarim Agdoshim say, you know why Chazal said it? Because if Chazal had said differently, we can never have a situation that a person drowned in Mayim She'en Lem Soif and he would be saved. Chazal put into the creation, put into the Bria, that a person could survive Mayim She'en Lem Soif. Isn't that Rav Shalom? The last sugya that we had in the Masechta, Shloitenel Delas B'fnei Lovin, that we could trust in Eid Echad, that people should want to help each other. Why? So we said at Eid Echad, we don't have to have a Drisha v'chakira, we don't have to ask the Eidim. So Masechta does speak much about Shalom. But I want to concentrate for a couple of moments on one other lesson. The Mashal says there are 4 Masechtas that end with this Maimer Chazal. Bonayach, Brochus, Nida, Yevamos, Krisis. And the Aruch HaNer says, why dafka these 4 Masechtas? So the Aruch HaNer says, Brochus represents Ben Adam Lamokim, when we make a bracha. And we have to be B'Shalom with the Eibishter. Yevamos represents Ben Adam L'Chaverei, as Rav Hauer described how one person does for the other person. Nazar is Ben Ish L'Ishtoi. We had Rashi, Masechta, and Parshas Nasai. Haroi Soita B'Kalkuloi, Yazar Atzmi Menayayin. We want to bring peace. And Nazar, and Krisis, Nazar is Ben Ish L'Ishtoi, and Krisis is Ben Yeguf and Neshama, that we should chas v'shalom not have Krisis. Yevamos represents the concept of Ben Adam L'Chaverei. I was today in the London Besdin, and I saw a beautiful portrait of Rav Chaskel Abramsky, the Rav here in London. Rav Chaskel Abramsky said, what's pshat? Talmidei Chachomim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. He says, Talmidei Chachomim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam means that their existence in the world. When you have in the world people who are Talmidei Chachamim, when you could observe and learn from people who are Talmidei Chachamim, it has such a profound influence. It has such a profound effect on every person who meets them. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to know them well. Seeing them, greeting them, learning from them. That's Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Their existence. And my Rabbi say, if I may say, the people who learn the Daf Yomi, you don't have to be Rabbanim, and you don't have to be Rosh Yeshiva. You are the Talmidei Chachamim of the world. The people who learn the Daf Yomi every day, and we all know what it means, the commitment of 365 days a year. Every day, there's no day off. What a lesson that is to our families. I have not yet met, in the over 30 years that I've been learning the Daf Yomi, been saying Shiurim and Daf Yomi, a family who has not been incredibly positively affected and influenced by the husband, by the father, learning Daf Yomi. This pshat is what Rav Chaskel Rabamsky Zatzal said. Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, because your entire existence changes people's lives. It changes people's lives that you are different. And I have to say this because it's a question that I'm asked very often. You know, they say to me, it's so hard. We just finished Masechta Yevamos. How much do I remember? Why should I continue? Rabbi say, I'm not a Musar Zoger, I'm not a Navi, I'm a Pashto Yid. Meir Rabbi say, I have to say, it's the Atzas HaYetzer. Everybody who learns the Daf, if you remember 1% or 100%, and even if you miss a day, it happens. Even if you miss a day, learn the next day. It will be the biggest chus for you and your mishpacha. I'm not talking when you'll come up to Shemaim after 120 years. I'm talking about in this world. And nobody should say they can't do it. I have to mention a number of people have told me that they heard me and they heard that I had a brother-in-law. His name was Rav Zachariah Wallerstein. He was just sniffed recently, Rosh Chodesh Iyar. So I knew my brother-in-law, Rav Zachariah Wallerstein, for over 45 years. Rabbi say this was a Yid who was not the best bacher in yeshiva. This was a person who didn't even go to kollel because he wasn't holding by it. But he decided, I want to do something for Klal Yisrael. And he did. And he did. Everybody can do. There's no such a thing that you can't do. There's no such a concept. The Daf Yomi wasn't said to me, it's too hard, I can't learn. Chas v'sholem. Everybody has a gewaltige koiches. And we need to take those koiches that the Eibishter benches us with those koiches and use it for liman HaTorah. You're not doing the Eibishter a taiva. And you're not even doing yourself a taiva. You're doing your family a taiva. You're doing everybody you come in contact with. We live in a world, the OU is very involved with this, with children trying to bring their children at risk. There are so many people that have different inyanim. And the Torah is marbim shalom ba'olam. The bracha of the Torah is the bracha. The Gemara at the end of Masechta Yevamos quotes, Tanya Amar Gamliel, Pamachas Haisi Mahalach B'Sfina. I was once going on a boat, V'risi Sfina Achet Shenishbra, and I saw a boat that drowned. V'yimistrisi Mitztar Al Talmud Chacham Shabbat. And I was so upset about Talmud Chacham who was on that boat. Umanu, who was that Talmud Chacham Rekiva? That I was sure he drowned. Ukshilisa biyabasha ba'av yoshav v'don lefanai. Rabbi Kiva, who I was convinced did not survive, came to me. Amalei, B'ni, Amalei, I said to B'ni, me halucha, who pulled you out of the yam? Amalei, daf shel sfina nizdamen li. V'kol gal v'gal shaba alai Nanesiloi Baraishi. Ramey Shapiro says, Rabbi Akiva lived in a very difficult time in the history of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Akiva lived in the time where Jews were persecuted. Yom Kippur Tisha B'Av is coming, Yom Kippur is coming. We know where Rabbi Akiva was from the Asara Haruge Malchus. And Rabbi Gamliel asked Rabbi Akiva, how did you survive? How did you survive those difficult times? And Rabbi said, we all know, we live in very difficult times. We live in a gefährliche Gullus. All of us who are here, I often say this in Shiurim, I am a child of survivors. It was hard to relate sometimes to parents who are survivors. And I grew up in America. We had everything we needed. But now, Rabbi say, everybody sitting in this room is a survivor. Everybody who, Baruch Hashem, survived COVID is a survivor. And we could start appreciating, because we all know, I'm sure it's no different here than it was in the United States, how so many people were very sick and are still suffering, and how so many people, Befrat Gedolei Yisrael, didn't make it. And we survived. And Rabbi said, we believe, as Rabbi Akiva said, I'll call daf v'daf. I grabbed onto the daf shosfina. I grabbed onto that daf yomi. And I connected my life to the daf yomi. And it's not dafka, you have to learn Masechta Yevamos, and now you have to learn Masechta Ksubis. But you have to learn every day. And that changed, that caused me that I didn't drown in the Yam. That's Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Marbim Shalom Ba'olam means that we could be Marbim, we could bring to our lives Shleimus. As Rav Chaskel Abramsky Zatzal said, I saw an interesting shaila in the Sefer Cheshuke Chemed. He discusses that there was a home in Eretz Yisrael. We know that the houses in Eretz Yisrael are apartment houses, and they have a vad bayis, they have a committee that runs the home. And there was a vad bayis that the person who was running it was a difficult individual, and in that house there was a Talmud Chacham living in the house. And they came over to this Talmud Chacham, maybe you should take over and run the vad bayis, you're such a wonderful, pleasant person. And he says, yeah, but it takes away from my learning. So he said, but isn't Shalom such an important concept as we're discussing? And they said, maybe not. Rav Silberstein says, people looking at him. You look at a Talmud Chacham, it's Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, it brings Shalom. I recently saw a Gevalde Gevart. Every morning, it doesn't make a difference what nusach we daven. We say, Kulam Ahuvim, Kulam Berurim. We speak about the Malachim. So, what does Kulam Ahuvim mean? What does Kulam Berurim mean? So Rabbeinu Yoina explains, Ahuvim means that all Malachim love each other. There's no kinna amongst the Malachim. Kulam Berurim means that everybody has the clarity of knowing what is their place in the world. But the question is, wonderful, Malachim, Ahuvim, Berurim. But why are we speaking about Malachim when we're about to daven? We're not Malachim. The answer is, if we want to be mispalel in a Havarabba, Lishmaya, Lilmad, or Lamed, Lishma Velasos, we need to learn the lesson of Malachim. We need to be Kulam Ahuvim and Kulam Berurim. We have to be Marbe Shalom Ba'olam. Last week, the OU, we recently moved in to new offices downtown Manhattan, and we had a Kvias Mezuzah. And we, Rabbi Genak and I, were asked to put on the mezuzahs at the front door. And the question came up, how do you put up the mezuzah? Do you put it up straight, or do you put it up slanty? It's very interesting. Last week, we read about Parshas Kairach, and everybody knows that what was the mitzvah that Kairach was focused on? Mezuzah. Why was Kairach focused on the mitzvah mezuzah? So I recently saw a beautiful vart. The pasuk says, "Mia ish asher bona bayis v'loy chanachai." Somebody built a new home and didn't inaugurate it. Yelich v'yoshev. He shouldn't go out to war. Zok the Targum Yonasan ben Amaziel. What's pshat v'loy chanachai? That he didn't put up a mezuzah. The question is, why is the mezuzah so incredibly important that for that you have to go back? So you put up the mezuzah when you come home. It's a long vart. I don't have the time to say the whole story. But the bottom line is, the mezuzah is the only mitzvah that we make a pshara. Rashi says you put the mezuzah up straight. The Rabbeinu Tam says you put it flat. And we decided we'll put it up on its slant. The lesson of the mezuzah is that we live to learn to agree with other people. We make a compromise. Every time, every Shemon Esrei, we end with Oisa Shalom B'mraimav Hu Yasa Shalom Aleinu, and we bow to the right, and we bow to the left, and we bow to the middle. We're ready to live and learn from every person, and we're ready to give in to every person. And that's the lesson of Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, that we bring shalom to the world, that we, with our behavior. And again, I say it's not the Magid Yishurim. The Magid Yishurim, we have a special schus and a special pleasure in giving the shir. But the people who learn the Daf Yomi, those are the true heroes of tonight's Siyum and of every Siyum and every morning when you get up or every night when you learn. Every day when we say I have a Rabbi, and with this I will conclude, we say Lishmaya Lilmad or Lamed Lishma Velasais. And the question is, of course we all have to be Lishmaya, we all have to be Lilmad, we all have to be Lasais, we all have to learn and do the mitzvahs and learn the Torah. But Lamed means to teach. Is everybody in Klal Yisrael a Melamed Torah? Is everybody in Klal Yisrael somebody who teaches Torah? Most of us don't teach Torah. Most of us are students, not Rebbeim. But that's not true. Every morning we declare, with our behavior, how we live our lives, and we live a life of Torah, that we're not just Lishmaya Lilmaid, we are people who are Lelamed. We are people who teach Torah. We maybe don't teach it on all daf, although you could call Rabbi Schwed, maybe you'll put your shir up. You need a lot of protection. Lelamed, every one of you are Lelamed. You teach your families and you teach your neighbors and you teach everybody who you come in contact with. And those that, and for Zoicha, to be the people who learn the Torah. So we will have the same Hatzlocha as Rabbi Kiva had, a kol daf v'daf, a kol gal v'gal on every wave that attacks us. And all the challenges of life, I hold on to that daf. And all the situations in life, that there are the situations that we have as a community and that we have as individuals, the schus ha-Torah, the schus of the shalom ha-Torah will be with us until the next time we meet each other, very soon, should be at a Siyum in Yerushalayim ha-Bnuya b'meher b'yameinu. What? Who's the second? Hartman sagt Yevamos v'adu chalon, data chalon sagt Yevamos v'data chalon, leisnishni minach sagt Yevamos leisnishni minon leibahama hadein v'leibahama dosi. Hartman sagt Yevamos v'hadu chalon, data chalon sagt Yevamos v'data chalon, leisnishni minach sagt Yevamos leisnishni minon leibahama hadein v'leibahama dosi. Hartman sagt Yevamos v'hadu chalon, data chalon sagt Yevamos v'data chalon, leisnishni minach sagt Yevamos leisnishni minon leibahama hadein v'leibahama dosi. Rotzaf nach Adonai leinu v'leseinu shtei turaschum l'seinu ba'olam hazeh say imonu lo'olam haba chanina ba'papa Rama ba'papa Nachman ba'papa Achoy ba'papa Abba Mor ba'papa Rafam ba'papa Roch ba'papa Sorch ba'papa Ad ba'papa Dor ba'papa Harevna Adonai leinu stivris rosku v'finu v'fiyas amcha beis Yisrael v'niya kolonu anachnu v'tzatzoynu v'tzatzoynu v'tzatzoy amcha beis Yisrael kolonu yoyde shmech v'leim desar sach l'shma ma'ivit ha'chmein v'tzasech kilayim hi li b'sum b'chukecha l'malay evosh Lo'olam la'eshka b'kudecha kivam chi'isani baruch atah Adonai l'amdeinu chukecha amen 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 salav ed. Moedem nachnu v'nach Adonai l'heinu v'leseinu shesantoch ha'kerem yoshi beis ha'medrash v'lesantoch ha'kerem yoshi korona sh'ona mashkimim v'hem mashkimim ona mashkimim l'divrei Torah v'hem mashkimim l'dvorim b'teilim ona amelim v'hem amelim ona amelim kal m'schar v'hem amelim v'enam kal m'schar ona rotzim v'hem rotzim ona rotzim l'chayu olam haba והם רוצים בהשחס, שנם ואתה אלוהים תרדנו בהשחס, עד שדוממים אל יחצי ימי ואני אפתח בך. ירוצים פנך אדוני אלוהינו, כשם שזרתנו, לסיים מסכת יבומס, כן תעזרנו, להסכלם מסכת ספורים אחרים לסיימם, למד ולמד לשמה לעשות קיים, as כל דברי סלמה תרסך בהבה, זכוס כל התנועים והמרועים וסלמידי חכמים, יעמד לנו ולזרנו, שלא יתמש אתר מפינו ופי זרנו וזר זרנו עד עולם, וססקיים בנו, בסלחה תנך אויסך, בשחבך סשמה עליך, והקיצויסה היא סיסיכך, כי וי יהיה ביומך, ויוסיפו לך שנייס חיים, אורך יומים בימינה, בשמאלה אוישה וחובד, אדוני אויז לי עמו ייתן, אדוני יבורך סמי בשולם.
Skadal viskada shmei rabo ve'olmod osil iskado sol chayo mesayo lasok yosen l'chayolmo u'lemivnei karadid v'Yerushalayim l'shach lo echalem gavo u'lemakafu chonon uchro min aro lasovo pochonon dishmayo lasrei v'yamlich kudsho brichu v'machusei v'korei v'chayi choynu v'yemei choynu v'chayi d'chol beis Yisrael v'agolov izman kariv v'imru amein Shmei Rabba, Borach L'olam, Olo Meo Mayo, Yisborach, V'Yishtabach, V'Yispoah, V'Yishrema, V'Yisnaseh, V'Yisada, V'Yisale, V'Yisala, Shmei D'Kudsho, Brichu, Le'ilo Min Kol Birchoso, V'Shiroso, Tishbuchoso, V'Nechemoso, Ta'amiram B'Yomo, V'Imru Amein, Al Yisroel V'Arabonon, Al Tamidei Hoin, V'Al Kol Tamidei, Samidei Hoin, V'Al Komon Doskim, B'Yiraiso, Divas Roden, V'Divachol Asar, V'Asar, Yel Hoin L'Choin, Shlomo Rabba, Chino v'chinsdo v'rachamin v'chayin arichin u'mazoyin aravicha u'furkona mikol mavoyin v'shmayo v'ar'o v'imru amein Yehei shlomo rabo min shmayo v'chayim oleinu v'al Yisrael v'imru amein Oiseh shalom b'imremav u'barachamav yaseh shalom oleinu v'al Yisrael v'imru amein
If we could ask everyone please to take a seat. Talmidei Chachamim Marbin Shalom Ba'olam. And I think tonight is testament to the fact that if only the founding father declaration in 1776 on the 4th of July, if they would have seen that there were going to be a group of 3 Rabbonim from America as the guest speakers hosted here in London under Her Majesty the Queen, but then to have the final speaker to be someone who was born and bred in America, but also the Av Beis Din of London, that is testament to Talmidei Chachamim Marbin Shalom Ba'olam. So it's a great schus and a kavod and a privilege for us to have the Av Beis Din of the Federation, the Rav and Av Beis Din of the Federation, someone who is the rabbinical advisor here to the Gelley, but also someone who we are so grateful to have in our kehillah, Dayan Zimmerman.
Birshus, Rav Elefant, Rav Hauer, Rav Schwed, and all the Messiahim. David HaMelech said, Toiv li teiras picha, me alfei zahav v'chesed. For me, it's better the Torah of your mouth, of Hashem's mouth, than thousands of pieces of silver, gold and silver. Now, to say one thing is better than another thing, it's axiomatic that they have to be comparable. For example, a Rolls Royce is better than a Vauxhall. How do I know that? Because I have a Vauxhall. And a Rolls Royce is better. In what way is it better? Really, they're both methods of transportation. They get you there at the same time, assuming the same speed. The answer is there's a greater level of comfort, it's a smoother ride, maybe it goes 0 to 60 a bit quicker, and that's besides the status symbol. However, if I'll ask you a question, what is better, a cow or a ballpoint pen? You won't be able to tell me. I can give you advice that if you want milk, choose the cow, and if you want to write a letter, always take the ballpoint pen. But you cannot compare the two, and therefore you cannot say one is better. Torah and money have 2 separate purposes. What you could do with one, you cannot do with the other. As everyone knows, before I moved to London about 2.5 years ago, I was the Rav in Gateshead. And you should know that even in Gateshead, the Ira Torah, you cannot go into a bakery and buy something and pay with a piece of ksosacheshin. You have to pay with actual money. So therefore, what does it mean? Toiv li teiras picha me'alfei zahav v'chesed. What I'd like to suggest is as follows. In fact, Torah and money have 2 totally different purposes. But the methods of acquisition are exactly the same. Let's take money. How does a person become rich? Now, I don't have personal experience, but along the way, being over a quarter of a century in Rabbanis in different continents, I've come along quite a number of wealthy people, millionaires, multimillionaires, and yes, even billionaires. How do you know someone's a billionaire? Everyone knows he's a billionaire. You ask the person, tell me how many children does he have? I have no idea, that's personal. But you know what's in his bank account, you don't even know how many children the person has. But nevertheless, we've all met people that are truly financially successful. And the question is, how do you become rich? And there's only 2 simple things. One, you have to think big. People, if you think big, you don't necessarily become rich. But if you don't think big, you'll never become rich. You might be a sameach b'chalkai, but you'll never become rich. You have to think big. The second thing is, after you think big, you got to start working hard. Some people think very big, and what they do is they buy a lottery ticket. You buy a lottery ticket, the chances of becoming a United States senator is 1 in 3 million. The chances of being hit by lightning is 1 in 7 million. Chances of winning a lottery are much, much longer than that. That's not called that you did hishtadlus. In fact, I have a first cousin every Friday. He lives in New York. He buys a lottery ticket. Now, we all know the drawing is Matzah Shabbos, I think 11 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, he rips up the ticket. And you ask him why. He says, because I know I'm not going to win. Why should I be disappointed? So why do you buy a ticket? He says, every Friday night I go to sleep at Aisha. You know, you dream differently. You dream differently when you're sleeping on the winning ticket. Matzah Shabbos, when reality kicks in, he rips it up. So you have to work very hard. And not only that, most people who were successful in business failed many times, and only the final time there's success, and that's what we hear about. You should know Torah is exactly the same. The method of acquisition of Torah is the same. You have to think big. If people think small, I want to learn this, a few dafim, a few simonim, you'll never acquire Torah. The person has to think big. And then after that, you have to start working hard. You have to roll up your sleeves. Everyone wants to learn Shas in one night, and they want to sleep 8 hours on that night. It doesn't go like that. You have to work hard on it. And yes, just like in business, you fail and fail till you succeed. That is the way you acquire Torah. Zog David HaMelech said, if the methods of acquisition of Torah and the method acquisition of wealth are the same, what do I want to put my energy into? I'd rather think big and work hard in Torah than in financial resources. That, I believe, is pshat in the pasuk. We're gathered here tonight to celebrate a embodiment of this. Sechtes Yevamos is called Thinking Big. And yes, this is part of a larger Daf Yomi program. And anyone who has involved in Daf Yomi knows that everyone starts brachas. Most drop out in Erevin. Those who make it past Erevin drop out in Yevamos. But if you've completed all of Yevamos, you should know that you're thinking big. And you're thinking towards all of Shas. But it takes hard work. There's dedication of a few months in a row of putting your mind to it. I want to pay tribute to the Maggid Shir, Harav Elefant. Everyone knows his shiurim are models of clarity. As a matter of fact, someone just drove me here and said, I've been listening to him for years. And I said, tell me what's the mile of his shir. So he says, I'll tell you a secret. He actually teaches the Gemara. He doesn't use the Gemara as a springboard to say what he has, a shtickle Torah that he has. He actually teaches the Gemara and tells you what the Gemara says. And this has all been augmented by the All Adaf, written by Rav Schwed many years ago. I was a chavrusa of his father, or his father was my chavrusa. And I took a peek at it. I looked up, I happened to be Yevamos Daf Kuf Yud Aleph, and I looked at it, and you see there a presentation on the daf. You have the introduction to the daf, the history of the daf, the halacha l'mais of the daf, and there's punkt the daf about a construction and a deconstruction of a chalitza shoe, all at the same time. This is called a person thinks big, and then they start working hard at it. And that's what we're celebrating tonight. And Yiratzen, just like you were Zeicha to be Messiah, Mesechtes Yevamos, you should go on to Mesechtes Ksubis, and all of Seder Nashim, and all of Shas, and with this Limud HaTorah, and to combine with the Limud HaTorah of all of Klal Yisrael, will greet Mashiach Tzidkenu B'mherei B'yameinu.